And I'll be talking to you today about how to make bread. So everyone likes to eat bread, right? My favorite sourdough bread. And I used to eat it a lot more, and then I decided to start making it homemade with my grandma. And so I have a pretty good recipe for you guys, and I'll just share it with you. So to make the sourdough bread, you have to gather ingredients and then mix them and bake them. So I've enjoyed eating this recipe, or eating this bread for like 5 years now. So to first do it, you have to gather ingredients, mix them, and then bake them. So let's start by gathering the ingredients. For the equipment, you'll need a mixer, a baking sheet, and a sheet pan. And then to start, you make the sourdough starter with sourdough starter is what it's called, and then 1/4 cup of scant for storing, and then 1 tablespoon. And then you add flour and water to the starter and you feed it. And then for the dough, you also add flour, water, and salt. And then now that you have all the ingredients, it's time to mix them together. And you must do it in the right order for the bread to turn out right. So first, for the sourdough starter, the day before, you need to expand the bread and allow 14 hours or so. And then you'll mix 1/4 scant into the starter, and then flour and water, and then you knead together until it's like a stiff dough texture. And then you'll allow the dough to ferment for a couple hours. And then you give the starter the feeding, and it'll ferment about 4 times its original size. And then you add it water and flour, and you knead again, and then do the process all over again. And then you'll store it in a glass with oil so it doesn't stick. And then you do another feeding for the second time, and it'll rise again to twice its size. And then you'll store it again in an oiled glass. And then you'll mix the dough, and you can do it by hand or with a mixer, but I like to do it with a mixer because it's easier. And then before you start, you should allow the dough to sit at room temperature before mixing. And then place it in the mixer bowl and add a little bit of flour, and then put the mixer on low speed and mix it until it's all mixed up. And then you cover the bowl with plastic wrap and allow it to rest for 20 minutes after you mix it. And then you'll oil your fingers and tear off about 2/3 of the starter and mix it into the dough and knead it on low speed. And then if it doesn't mix up together, you can add some water. And then it should be all ready to bake. And so you'll preheat the oven to 450, and then have an oven shelf at the lowest rack in the oven, and put the baking sheet on it, and then have a iron skillet or sheet pan on the floor of the oven. And then you can slash the dough on top of the bread before you bake it. And then you need to add ice cubes to the lowest baking sheet, and then put the bread in there and bake it for 5 minutes. And then you need to lower the temperature to 450 and continue baking for 10 minutes, and then lift the bread from the pan and set it directly on the stove and make it for another 10 minutes or 15. And then you can check and make sure it's done when it's tan brown in color. And then you'll just remove the bread from the oven and allow it to cool, and then you can serve and enjoy. So as you can see, making this bread is kind of difficult and has a lot of steps involved in it. So just a quick review: to make the bread, you have to get the ingredients, mix them together in the proper order, and then bake the bread. And then my references for this recipe were basic sourdough bread recipe at Norton and Company Inc. And then handy sourdough tips at weekendbakery.com, and rustic sourdough bread at kingarthurflour.com. And that was it. Thank you for listening.
Good job.
Show everyone. Show the audience.
You got an audience.
And then show yourself, because you have to count too.
Hi.